Well, good evening, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are and whatever time that you are visiting with us today. Welcome. Logan, how are you today?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's weird, with the powers of technology, we're
I know
together, but we're not together.
we are not together. How you doing, Pat?
I'm a little lagged, but I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, Pat just spent a couple of days in Nashville hanging out with the stars. I mean,
I did.
literally
I
the
did.
stars.
Yeah.
Tell us what you did, Pat.
I got to do a meet and greet and guitar clinic with Mark Tremonti, and realized how horrible of a guitar player I am. And but no,
Now,
it was really good. It was a great experience.
90% of our audience does not know who Mark Tremonti is.
Yeah, tell him
Oh,
tell him who he's with.
he's the guitar player from Creed, Alter Bridge, and his solo stuff.
Yeah. So he's very famous in most circles.
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
he still play with Alter Bridge?
yes, yeah. And
Man,
he's
how's that dude
he's
have time?
Dude, he's released a Sinatra album. He sings like Frank Sinatra, so he's done a whole cover album of that. He's got a solo album he just released while on tour with Creed. He's like the busiest guy in the music world. He's
Yeah.
just always on the road. But what's really cool is I took a video 2 years ago when I went and seen him in Nashville. And there was this elderly lady there. She tours everywhere with the band, and she was headbanging in the video, and I got it on video, and I just uploaded it to YouTube like forever ago, and apparently it's went viral. So now she is like an honoree. She came into the guitar clinic, and Mark himself like put her up on the couch next to him, put some pillows behind her and stuff, and was just so thankful that she was there. It was awesome, man.
That is
But
cool.
Yeah.
but you know how they say like don't never meet your heroes. It's horrible. This is not one of those cases. Mark Tremonti he's just an incredible, humble guy, super nice. Really gives back to everybody. It's just a really great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
Okay,
if you're
so now you
watching,
made us
Mark,
all
give us
jealous.
that thumbs up.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Do like Mark and
Mhm.
all of you. Hit that thumbs up, hit the like button, hit the bell,
Yeah. Now
comment.
the bell is kind of low key the one of the most important parts because I subscribe to a couple of YouTube channels and one of them I did not hit the bell and I'm thinking like when are they going to put out a new episode, and I
Mhm.
went to their channel and they put out 5 and I was never notified. So don't do
The
that.
the bell, I feel like, is probably the most underrated
Underrated.
thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm guilty myself. I'm
Yeah.
bad about I'm real, especially now that we've been in this media world, I will hit like and I hit subscribe like
And you don't hit the bell.
and I don't hit the bell. And
And
so
and
I'm
see,
guilty.
I think I'm the exact opposite because I don't do social media. So the only thing I got is YouTube, and I'm very dedicated to the people I follow. So that bell, it keeps me up to date on when they release
There you go.
content.
There you go.
Ring that bell.
Yep,
Yep.
do it to it.
Yeah. So, um, oh man, I gotta hang on. You guys talk for a minute. Why don't you intro the the episode that we're doing? Come on.
Go, go with well, actually, before we intro that, I feel like we need to highlight. Did we have any good
Oh
comments?
yeah. What
I
about
was just gonna
comments?
say that. Yeah. Okay. Rhonda said the Reverent and Rebellious road trip when we were talking about going everywhere.
Yep.
Right.
Alan said he uses AARs all the time about misunderstanding. He, I've been a part of some glass house drills that when conduct. Oh, I'm sorry. I know where he's going with this now. He said I've been a part of some glass house drills that when conducting the AAR, I thought maybe I was in a different house than the rest of everyone else that was hearing what they saw. AAR's after action report.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, I've done some drills that seems completely off the wall from other people's. Our buddy Jay says, a very common reason I hear for not accepting the gospel is if God is all powerful and wholly good,
Yep.
how do you he didn't say it, but how do you explain cancer, natural
Yep.
disasters,
Yep.
and this?
Yep.
Yep.
As for the worst reason, someone told me that they didn't believe they believe, but they don't want to change their lifestyle at all.
That is I guess at least they're honest.
Yeah.
And then Jay's second comment says, Topics I'm interested in are What does the Bible say about transgender people?
Yeah.
What is the best way to witness to people who are already suffering from church hurt? And are the 7 days of creation 7 literal days?
Oh man, we get
Good topics.
yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Yep. And that's the wrap on our comments.
Okay.
There you go. Well, y'all leave us some good spicy ones for this episode. I feel like what we're talking about tonight could really get some good comments
I,
because
I
we've all heard these.
I
yes.
really hope that we're changing the what comes out of people's mouth just off the hand, because like a lot
Yeah.
of times we'll fly things out just because it sounds good. And
Hey,
then, but
Well,
go
I'll
ahead.
tell
it's
you
been repeated
right,
to us so many times,
Yeah.
it is, and right after our God helps those who help themselves
Yeah.
thing. Marcy and I were out in the birdhouse. This is our farm office area out here, and her and my dad were making this cowboy candy stuff out of jalapenos. And we were all out in the birdhouse, and MASH was on. And literally, like we had just done this episode, one of the sergeants or something on the TV show MASH goes, "Well, God helps those who help themselves." And Marcy turned around and was like, "Oh," and I started laughing. So, yeah, it's everywhere. It's
Yep.
everywhere. So, what is
Okay.
our topic tonight?
Well, before we get there, I prepared for you a rapid fire barrage of dad jokes.
All
Okay.
right.
So we're going to get several in one whack here. These are true dad jokes. Okay, so did you hear about the guy who evaporated?
No.
He'll be missed. Um, when does a dad joke become a dad joke?
I don't know.
When it becomes apparent.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
What do you call a sad strawberry?
Ooh.
Oh, a blueberry.
A blueberry. You got it.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go.
What do you get when the Queen of England farts? A
Powder.
noble gas. What do you call a knight who is afraid to fight?
I don't know.
Surrender.
Surrender. I was
Okay.
like, day, I
Uh-huh.
don't know.
Yeah. No. 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 My wife was mad at me because I'm lazy. I didn't even do anything.
That's good. That's good.
Okay. Last one. What kind of lights did Noah have on the ark?
What kind of lights?
Yep.
What?
Floodlights.
Dang. See, some of these, like, I'm really trying to.
I know.
The first one, I was like, something missed. Missed did pop in my
Yeah.
head, but I'm like, I don't know
That's
how
it.
it would
He'll be
be
missed.
used. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, like that's my thing now as a dad. When I hear a dad joke, I'm trying to like
You just
break it
catalog it in
down.
your head. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in
There was
low gear because I'm like, I got none of these.
That's okay. That's okay. I have this shirt that says "Dad Joke Champion."
I
And,
agree with that.
yeah,
Yes.
and there were some young people out in the Family Life Center there, and they were new. I didn't know them, and so I was introducing myself and everything, and they're looking at my shirt and they go, "Oh, really? Are you? Are you the Dad Joke Champion?" I said, "Yeah, I certainly am." I said, "Did you hear about the kidnapping in school yesterday?" I said, "No." I said, "It's okay. He woke up."
Yeah.
And they were just like, "Okay, you got me."
Yeah,
Yeah.
get out of here.
I
That's
know.
like
I know.
it's like the classic, is your refrigerator running?
Yeah.
They're like, well,
Better go
yeah, well
check.
then you better go catch it,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And um, there used to be like my grandpa used to tell this one because this is back when tobacco came in cans,
Oh
you
yeah.
Mm,
know,
yeah.
and so he would laugh because they would call the drugstore and they'd say hello and say, "Do you have Sir Walter Raleigh in a can?" And they say, "Yes, we do." And they say, "Well, let him out." Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
Um,
dads, man. That's what we do.
there's this recording that we used to listen to on the road a lot, and it basically the whole recording is a recording of a series of phone calls that
Mhm.
this musician used to call this one bar, and this gruff old bartender would answer every time, and he would come up with something different every time, and he would say, I would say, something like, I need to talk to Mr. Loney. Is there a Bill Loney there? And the guy go, yeah, is this just a baloney here? Is there a baloney? And then he realized what he did, and he
Yeah.
Yeah.
started cussing him out and everything. And he go, you know, it was hilarious. He harassed this guy so bad.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
Anyway,
grew
good.
up on Roy D. Mercer.
Roy D.
That's who I
Mercer,
thought
I
of. Yep.
know.
How big a boy are
How
you?
big a boy are you?
Yeah, my boy Raymond. He's the one that
I,
gets me.
Yep.
oh, that-
Yep.
yeah, we probably listened to every single one of those episodes. All right, so today we are continuing. We may do one more of these, we may not. I don't know yet, but these we've gotten some really good feedback on these. This is little series called "The Bible Doesn't Say That."
Hmm.
And so, what have we been through? We've been through God helps those who help themselves, not in the Bible. What else have we done?
To
To
thine
thine
own
own
self.
self.
Be
Yep.
true, yeah, not in the Bible as well,
Yep.
even though it's thine in it. What else have we
Yes.
done? We did. Oh man, it's been so long.
Uh, I know. That's been a week ago. I
We
don't
did
even remember.
what goes around comes around.
Yeah,
Karma. Yep.
karma.
Yeah, and we did everything happens for a
For a
reason.
reason. Hmm.
Mhm.
Ah,
So
yeah.
all of these things, they're not in the Bible. We kind of think they are sometimes. We sort of act like they are sometimes. We throw them around. God helps those who help themselves. No, God clearly. That one we did last week. God will never give you any more than you can handle.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
That's ridiculous. Anyway,
Hey, hold on.
yeah.
All right, Pat. We read the wrong comments.
Did we?
What do you mean?
All right, I thought I was going crazy when you read those. I was like, man, I swear I've heard these. I was like, this is some deja vu.
Really?
Yeah, because we got a bunch. We had a bunch of comments.
Oh, go for it, man.
Yeah, so actually, my aunt, she wrote one. She said, I didn't necessarily believe all of these sayings are in the Bible, but I thought in certain situations they could be encouraging and comforting. That's
Yep.
on the, yeah. And so she said, how mundane they sound listening to y'all discuss them. Sometimes our presence, a hug, and silence is the best response we can give to someone's tragedy.
Ah, that
I
is so
never
true.
thought that trying to comfort someone could cause more pain. Thanks for the schooling. And then
Told
I'm
you
not
guys I
sure.
was on slow roller today.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm like, man. I swear I've heard these. And then I'm not sure who this is. But they said, "Oh my gosh, the Arnold with the tinge of Sean Connery voice will be stuck in my head."
That's Rhonda. That's
Yes.
Rhonda.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's exactly the way I did that.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
Mhm.
Debbie says, "Thank you, Lord, for giving us your Holy Spirit." Couldn't
Yep.
agree more. Amber said, "Great episode. I'm sure I have said every one of these sayings too. I
I
also
know.
pray while cutting grass, for it is written, lawn mowing is next to godliness." Just teasing. Um, Jay, he said, I've always struggled with trying to reconcile the idea that God is all powerful, completely holy, and yet gives people cancer and causes natural disasters. Y'all's discussion regarding everything happens for a reason was really engaging to me for that reason.
Cool.
I think it'll take a lot more study and reading on my part to fully grasp the concept y'all are laying out, but it really starting my gears turning on that subject.
Man,
So
that's
that's
awesome.
awesome. And then so this may be Rhonda again. Rhonda, you gotta get a name that I can.
It
It's
is. You
user
you got to
IZ.
look at the icon. It's got an R on it. That's how I
Oh,
know
I see that. Okay. The tendency of always looking for a person to blame for circumstances and happenings drives me mad, and seriously, it is frightening too. If
Yeah.
you want to look for a fall guy for bad things, i.e., tornadoes, illness, etc., it can expand and escalate. Scary.
it.
Yep. Elaine
So
said,
true.
will you all open my eyes again? I sure thought all of these things came from the Bible. It's all in how we personally translate the verses, I guess. Thanks again.
It's true.
Alan, he wrote, Yo, I listened over on Spotify this week. The intro over there is amazing. And I
Yes. Shout out to Jim Wolf for that. Yeah.
Yep, and that's so Alan, we appreciate that, man. Last one, Amber, she commented, and I had to comment back to her here. She said, Logan, wasps do eat bad bugs, flies, aphids, and they do help pollination unintentionally. But yes, horseflies and mosquitoes are straight from the gates of hell. I will
Yeah.
ask God about the purpose of their existence one day. And I said, don't give me reasons to like wasps. So
Yeah.
But
Uh,
here's the thing. Now I know that mosquitoes are bat food, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
bats love mosquitoes,
Yep.
and you always like to see bats flying around outside your pool and
I
stuff like
love
that. So,
bats.
yeah, I do too. I think they're awesome. But as much as I value mosquitoes as bat food, why do they have to actually bite me?
Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean,
that's right.
why?
And same thing with wasps. They might eat bad bugs, they might pollinate, but why did they have to sting me?
Yes. Yep. I agree.
And
I agree.
Alan, as far as the intro goes on Reverent and Rebellious on the Spotify side, the soundtrack, that's Peter and I did that, and that's why I went to the guitar clinic because of Peter said I need to get my chops up.
That's it.
I told him that was you on the guitar. That's what I commented back. I said, "That's Pat on guitar."
I
Yeah,
said,
Said me and
um,
the cowbell.
yeah, and I said, Pat, you need more than one chop.
yeah.
Anyway, so we're gonna do two, maybe three, depends on how winded you guys are.
Yep.
But here's one that kind of flies under the radar. And this is one you tend to want to console a good friend about because it sounds so right. And that is when one door closes, or no, when God closes a door, he opens another one.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah. I have probably said that one myself, to be honest
I'm
with you.
pretty sure I have as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Any idea where that's found in the Bible?
Probably for whatever door the Lord shuts, no man may open it. And what that verse, I don't remember which one it is off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
there's a couple, actually, a number of places where it talks about doors opening and all these different kinds of things. But the interesting thing is it comes from either Alexander Graham Bell or Helen Keller.
Wow.
One quoted the other, we think. Um, and the original quote is, when one door closes, another door opens, but we often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we do not see the one which has opened for us.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. I mean, okay,
Crying
it's
over
good.
spilled milk.
Well, right. Is that in the Bible?
Yeah. It sounds like it should be.
It kind of maybe it does.
Jesus might have said that to the Pharisees. Y'all are crying over spilled milk over
Crying
here.
over spilled milk. Yeah, yeah. It is finished. There's nothing you can do about it now.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, the, it may have been earlier than that. Well, here's the way Helen Keller said it. When one door of happiness closes, another opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one that's been opened for us. But then um, Johann P.F. Richter, say that in a normal voice, also known widely as Jean Paul, German humor writer of the late 18th and early 19th century, wrote, when one door closes, another always opens. But we usually look so long, so intently, so sorrowfully upon the closed door that we do not see the one that has opened.
This is definitely pre-internet because none of them are being able to call out the other one for
That's it.
copying them.
That's
Um,
Like,
exactly right.
yeah.
that scripture I was thinking about, it's Revelation 3, verse 7.
Yeah, yeah,
And it says, to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write, he who is holy, who is true, who has the key of David, who opens, no one will shut, and who shuts, no one will open.
that's it.
Yeah.
Which has nothing to do with God closes a door,
Yeah.
he opens another one. Um, yeah. Then the earliest reference to this was in 1605, Miguel de Cervantes' famous novel Don Quixote.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
He just says, when one door is shut, another is opened. Period. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's the history.
Well, that makes. I mean, again, I'm pretty certain I have said this before, and it ties in. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but because I made a note here because I was telling them off air, this made me think of something. I don't want to spoil. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait. I think that I don't want to jump the gun on what I
Okay.
want to talk about, but it ties in with that. Um, yeah. Let me look at something where I want to make sure I'm okay. It actually does work with this. So I've heard and I'm sure you guys have as well. And I think I've mentioned him on here before. If not, I've told y'all about him. Stephen Pressfield. Have y'all read any of his books?
I haven't
I
read any. I know of
haven't
them.
read it. I know what you're talking about.
Well, in his book War of Art, I love the book, but Stephen is really big on this thing, and he's an older guy. He was in the Marine Corps, and he's just a legendary writer, and he talks about the universe aligning whenever you kind of put yourself in motion of doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, sure.
Like he says, the universe will kind of collude to
Yeah.
help you succeed.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I mean, he's got his latest book is called Put Your ASS where your heart belongs or something. And
Interesting.
and that's his whole premise is like if you want to be a writer, put your
Yeah.
butt in the seat and start
Yeah.
writing and start doing that. If you want to be a musician, start playing, put yourself,
Yeah.
and then the universe will like collude to help you rock and roll. And I mean he truly believes in that. And
Well,
I
the
Yep.
feel
universe is colluding all around me. But
yeah, well, and I feel like that's what he's basically saying. He's like,
yeah,
the universe is going to open the door.
That's
I
right.
don't think that he is a. I'm taking a guess here, but I don't think Stephen's a man of faith because I mean, for us, like other people could replace that and say rather than the universe is
Right.
colluding and opening,
Right.
God is opening the door. So,
yeah.
what do y'all think about that?
Well, it reminds me of one of my favorite little sayings, which is when you ask God to move mountains, don't be surprised if he hands you a shovel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I mean, it's
it's
like we got to do our part, right?
and as
yeah,
far as where you were saying, put your butt where your heart is. I agree with that from a work ethic standpoint, but also, the old phrase, "Practice makes perfect."
yeah,
I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree with perfect practice makes perfect.
yeah,
Because there can be people that play guitar or study and just go through the motions all day long, but unless you really go through it and do useful tactical stuff, it's not going to matter.
yeah. You can practice the wrong thing, and you
Yeah.
just get
Well,
better at being wrong.
it,
Yeah, or
it's
practice.
it's a it's a great like motivational work ethic, but I don't think God's gonna be like, you know what, you played guitar for 5 minutes today. I'm gonna help you out.
Yeah,
Well, and it's just like, what if you just lifted the same amount of weight every day?
Right.
It's not going to hurt you. It's going to be not gonna be bad for you, but you're just not going to get where you need to go, right?
Yep.
yeah, yeah. You just
I
plateau.
It reminds me, your comment reminds me. Um, Back in the day, I put a band together for this new artist that was just got signed, was just going out and doing a few things. His name was James T. Horn,
Okay.
and he was going to be the next big deal. And so I was his band leader. We put together this thing, and I'm not lying about this. His first release didn't do so well, so they've been holding on to this second release, and they go like, "Yeah, this one's going to be the one." And the name of the song was "If My Heart Had an Ass, I Would Kick It."
Yeah, that's top charting material right there.
If Billy Ray had gotten a hold of that one,
That's what I'm talking about. That's what they were kind of thinking, "Hey, this is the next Billy Ray Cyrus,
Yeah.
thing,
yeah.
sensation." Yeah. I wish I could remember all the lyrics to it. I used to just laugh at it while I was playing it. My heart
So
had
I'm
an
guessing
ass.
it didn't ever. The universe did not collude with him on that one.
No, even though he moved in that direction, I'm telling you. Yeah. It was, um, I just cannot remember
See,
Well,
the lyrics.
wouldn't
this
you
is the
say?
go ahead.
Wouldn't you say that's the same kind of thinking though? Like that God. I mean, and I'm gonna ask too. Like, do you think that God does? Do you think He does open some doors? I mean, because I've
I do.
thought about that
I
myself.
do.
Because there's been things in my own life that have
Yeah.
happened, and I'm like, that wasn't just my doing.
So
Absolutely.
here's the second question. Does God close doors?
I think
Absolutely.
so.
Absolutely he does.
Yeah.
I mean, God has saved my heart and my behind
Yes.
um, more than one time
Well,
because I was getting ready to go headlong into something, and there's a little catch in my spirit or a circumstance that didn't work out. I found out later that it was a complete, tire fire.
Yeah,
Well, Peter, you said it earlier. I think we were off air when you did. It's like it's not formulaic though.
See, here's where you get into trouble. Okay, so um, I want to. By the way, this phrase is found in the movie The Sound of Music. Yeah.
that's why I don't know it. Get my
You're not a big musical guy,
But
are you?
no.
um, Maria says, Reverend Mother says, when the Lord closes one door, somewhere He opens a window. Kind
Oh,
of a version of that, right?
I tell my
Um,
wife the only movies she's ever seen are musicals. I give her crap about that all the
yeah,
time. So
I know. I'm not a big musical fan, but it's okay. The thing that really gets me in The Sound of Music, and I watched that movie, uh, I don't know, 119 times. I don't know, because my mother has to watch it every Christmas.
yeah,
And the part in that movie that gets me is when they're being pursued by the Nazis.
Hmm.
They're trying to get out of the country. They're trying to get out to that hillside where they go, the hills are alive, all that. They're hiding in the graveyard.
Hmm.
And the little girl says, I'm scared. She says, I know, honey. She says, is this the time where we get to sing about our favorite things? I'm not singing.
while they're hiding in the
Yeah.
graveyard.
They're
Be
about to get
quiet,
shot.
but
Yeah,
let's
Yeah,
sing.
exactly. And somebody ends up sneezing and they have to run. It's just crazy. Anyway, okay.
Textual error.
yeah.
So there's this article that I discovered, and I like this. He says there are three faults we must recognize in this cliche. And fault number one is a faulty depiction of life. Um, it leads us into a faulty vision of the Christian life because the phrase is always employed at the point of difficulty. I lost my job. Don't worry. When God closes a door, He always opens another one. Okay, all right.
So is
Um,
God always causing these things then?
this is kind of where we keep coming back to. It's kind of a sign of blame to God, and it's assuming that God closed this door, not the fact that you didn't show up for work on time for 9 days in a row.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, don't
Again,
worry.
no ownership. It's very similar to what we talked about last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also what you just said about, if you, get your butt in the chair,
Yeah.
and God opens a lot, definition of luck is it's a combination um, of hard work and opportunity.
Yeah.
It's like those two things come together. And it's like somebody famous said, it's a funny thing. The harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not always God that closes the door. It's not always God that opens the next one. Um, so, yeah, and it's funny. He says here, the good and pleasant things of life are never described to us as God closing a door. Why? Because we like these things. We consider them all open doors. Um, and the interesting thing he says here is that's not what we see in Scripture. Have you ever noticed that the path of righteousness for God's name's sake runs right through the valley of the shadow of death?
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that? I like that. Um, so then it assumes also that any open door or open window is something that's beneficial for your life. It requires no further discernment. If it's an open door, it must have been God that opened it, and everything's gonna work out great. And then he reminds us of the verse that says, "Enter through the narrow gate,
Yeah.
for very few find it."
Yeah, that
Uh,
could get you in trouble. I feel like that could definitely get you in trouble because you're like, well, this is where I'm supposed to be.
yeah,
Like it, and it's like, well, I feel like guys could almost use that to justify, like, well, my marriage collapsed because I was pursuing this route, but God opened this door, so I just had to go that way.
man,
It
I
just
have
happened
had
to be a
people.
married woman's house.
Yeah.
Man, my dad, he actually had someone come to his office and he said, I feel like God is calling me to leave my wife and pursue this other woman. And my dad said, nope, he's not. I'm going to speak for God right here.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak prophetically into your life that God is not calling you to do that.
Yeah.
And
Did the guy heed him?
no, he did not.
Yeah.
This is what he wanted. And it's like, why,
Yes.
why don't you just be honest with yourself? It's not a door that God is opening.
Mhm.
It's a door
In fact,
you're trying to open. Yes.
exactly right. Okay,
That's
so
hilarious.
it's a faulty view of life. It's a faulty view of self. It sort of implies that we have no ability to hear from God, to discern God's will. We just have to wait around until a door opens, or we just are at the mercy of a door closing. Once again, God is the author of all the closing doors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So He closed it, I guess. And we also kind of think, okay, well, if if God shut that one down, there must be something better.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, I have been involved in situations where God just closed the door.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, just closed. And maybe you could say, that the continuation of my life was an open door of sorts, but there was no magic formula there.
Hmm.
Um,
I think it's kind of like the same as the trials and the tragedy thing, like
yeah,
how, if you could lose this job, and yeah, like you said, somebody can try to justify it by saying, well, God closed that door, not taking any ownership for themselves. But could they be like, I'm thinking like, all right, this dude's some high level executive and he
yeah,
gets laid off, fired, and he has to take a job in a factory running a forklift, making a quarter of what he was making as an executive. Now, in his mind, like, he's probably not going to say God opened that door for him. But on the same hand, does that mean that it could turn into something that literally changes his life,
it
and like,
absolutely could.
Yeah.
and
But
and God can use that moment, like
there
we've
you
said.
go. There
So,
you go. That goes right back to, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good. Not that God causes all things.
yeah,
You know, companies
Mhm.
just go in different directions. The
Sure.
economy changes. God is not up there pulling the puppet strings and making, the economy change just so you can leave the job you're at and go to another one. It's not all
yes,
about you.
yes,
Um,
It's funny. God's doors always revolve around our wants and desires.
oh my
very true.
gosh.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
I'm
And
still
just like
waiting. Yeah,
the
still waiting on that.
I know. Just like the tornado example we did last week, right? Thank you, God, for moving that tornado away from my house.
Hmm.
You saved my life, and you you destroyed the trailer park down the road. It's like,
Yes,
how do we how do we get there? I don't know. So it's a faulty view of life, a faulty view of self, and it's a faulty view of God. And this is this is just a common thread that seems to run through so many of these cliches that we assign authorship of the closed door, whatever it is, to God, and and this whole idea of God closes a door, he'll open a window. It's like, okay, God's gonna close this awesome thing and give you something else really crappy and second rate. You're gonna have to crawl through a window. It's like
yeah,
we make up all this stuff, but really what it does is it tries to force God to do something.
Yep.
It's like
Yep.
when we use phrases like that and put them in scripture, and it's like, well, okay, God, you closed that door. I'm waiting.
yeah.
Where's my open door? Because you
And
said,
I like that you said put them in Scripture too,
I know that's what we
because
do.
they're not there.
They're not there. They're nowhere to be found. In fact, um, uh, yeah, okay. So he gives a couple of examples. Um, King David wanted to build the temple, right?
Hmm.
Um, God closed that door. Says, no, you got too much blood on your hands. You're not going to build the temple. Your son's going to build the temple. So, what other window did God open for King David? He died. You know,
Yeah, that's
so
an open door.
Death. Yeah, that
well,
was
maybe
his.
it is. That's the whole thing, though. We can sort of label things
Yep.
to fit the formula.
Oh, you can
It,
manipulate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the
yeah.
Nostradamus effect. You wait till a big event happens and then say, "Oh, that's what that prophecy was about."
Because
Yeah.
you're like David. David had reached the pinnacle, so he just got to go to heaven. like, like the best door for him was
Yeah,
the
Well,
afterlife.
I mean, it's
I know.
in David's defense, as much stuff that he got to accomplish was probably like they closed that door, then David won the next game in basketball. Like,
Yeah,
the guy's already winning, so that's what the Lord gave him.
yeah. David would be a high bar to
Yeah.
surpass. I feel like.
Okay, so as we put a button on this first one, because the next one's going to be a lot longer.
It
Um,
really is.
I I love the way that he kind of finishes this up. He says, um, "It's easy to see how the phrase 'when God closes the door, he opens a window or another door' is, does not coincide with biblical truth. Um, it offers no hope and biblical truth to those who find themselves facing difficulty. It doesn't really help at all to tell your best friend who just lost his job, don't worry, because when God closes the door, you don't know if God, you, you know, it's just, once again,
Yeah,
say, I'm sorry. Let's go. I'll buy you lunch. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So he says, what does the Bible actually say? Um, the truth that is actually helpful is, particularly in times of difficulty or hardships, is the presence of God is always with you. God is
Mhm.
always with you. When the door closes, when the door opens, God is always with you, never abandoned. This is the truth proclaimed in all of Scripture. It is revealed as the Creator walks toward the wayward couple in the cool of the garden. It is the Shekinah of God traveling with Israel through the struggles of the Exodus. It's the truth that God was never away from the sufferings of Job, even though that is how it felt. But more than anything, it is a truth fully revealed in Jesus. That sounded like a sermon.
Yeah.
I could get behind that.
Yeah.
I could, yeah. Um, Christians look not to open doors or windows. We look to our incarnate Lord. That's how he finishes it.
All
How about
right.
that?
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
that.
I do too.
Sometimes windows close and sometimes they open. Sometimes it's God that's
Yeah.
blessing us. Sometimes it's God that's cautioning us. But not every situation is a guarantee that God will do what you think he ought to do.
I
That's what
think that that phrase ought to be doors and windows open and close. So just cling to the Lord.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like,
exactly right.
Yeah.
let's quit trying to math our way through it.
I know.
You
I
know,
know.
I have done like in the farming standpoint with land. If we've been purchased land, like on every farm purchase, and maybe I'm kind of taking the easy road here a little bit, but one of the things I always do is I pray before we. I mean, I pray a lot over if we're going to make a large,
Yeah,
Hmm.
investment or whatever on the farm, take on a
absolutely.
lot of risk. Like I think on it, I pray on it and all that. But one of the things that I do, and I'm passing the buck a little bit, but I pray, God, is if this is meant to be, let it be. If it's not, then don't let it be. Like
Yeah,
I'm that's literally I'm like,
Yeah.
if I'm not supposed to buy this place, then let them shoot me down. Like I'd
yep,
rather them shoot me down than do something that I'm really not in a position to do.
Yeah.
and even if it looks good, yeah, I pray a lot that God would just put a catch in my spirit.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You know, throw me a red flag, give me a caution, help me to be sharp so I can discern kind of spiritually what's going on. And even then, I miss it sometimes.
Yeah.
I
See,
I
y'all are
kind of
way more polite. My prayer is always, Lord, don't let me be an idiot. Don't let me miss it. Because like I wonder how many I've missed throughout my life.
oh my
Just
God,
because we always know best for ourselves, of course. So that's my prayers. Just let me not be dumb today. Let me see it.
Pat, I'm too far gone to pray that prayer. I, I I've been an idiot for a lot longer than you have. So there you go.
That's why you're
Okay.
the senior. I'm just a junior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've perfected the art of idiocy by
Yeah.
now, right?
That's why you're my mentor, Peter.
There you go. See, we're all in this together. All right. So now we get to the big one, and this one I want. Okay, this is going to cause some hair to stand on end, some wigs to fall off. It's going to cause great angst and consternation among our listening audience, but you need to just hang with us for a minute, okay? Because we'll explain what we mean when we talk about this beloved phrase that we always remind ourselves when things are absolutely going off the rails. What do we say? When the world's going mad, when our life is falling apart, when we don't know what we're going to do next, we say it's okay because
Jesus,
God is
take
in
the wheel.
control.
Jesus, take the wheel. Where did we say that, Logan? God is in control. Don't worry, because God is still in control. I know there's wars and rumors of wars. I know there's diseases and pestilences and famines and earthquakes and natural
God's in
disasters
control.
all over. But don't worry about it because God is in control. It does not, I'm sorry to tell you this, does not say the words God is in control in the Bible. It
That's right.
doesn't. Now, some would argue with me, and I'm okay because I can take an argument. Okay, but in my extensive, minutes and minutes of research, I mean hours and hours of research, actually, I came across this article in particular, and this is the name of this article, just so you know, is 10 Bible verses that prove God is in control.
All
Okay,
right.
so. And this is, I'm sure this is a wonderful woman, Dr. Sandra Hamer Smith. And she, it's not that she doesn't have any good points, not that she has good scripture, but um, Logan, what does it mean to you that God is in control?
Well, I think it's there's a common theme with a lot of these things, and
Yeah.
generally, I
Mhm.
feel like it's almost a comfort seeking for tragedy. A lot of times, it's
Yeah.
I mean, most of the things we've talked about, I mean, you could use that obviously the open door thing we just talked about. I think you could go back and say to even to thine own self be true. I feel
I
like
know.
you could use to justify a tragedy. Like,
Mhm.
if you're lost in a terrible moment and someone can say, "Well, man, to thine own self be true." Like you could
Be
try to
honest with yourself. Dig down deep. There's something beautiful inside. Yeah, I know.
yeah.
I
So
agree.
I feel like a lot of these it's the common theme is lack of ownership and justification of tragedy.
Or trying to find certainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We,
And
you know,
also, I think this is where we get, we a lot of times we will throw around big church words, and I think this is one of those places where we need to not be afraid of a church word because I think we confuse this
yeah,
God is in control statement with the theological statement God is sovereign, the
Yeah.
sovereignty of
Yeah.
God.
and
And
here's where we've gotten a little bit offline about this whole word sovereign.
mhm,
Because once again, like we talked about last week, with everything happens for a reason. That's not the way God rules, and it's not the way He set it up. There are things that happen for absolutely no reason at
yeah,
all.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's right.
so that then goes back to this statement, which is that God is in control. What that, if we say, God is sovereign, God has planned everything out in advance. Nothing happens outside of the counsel of His will, as they will say. So that it's all cut and dried, and you basically have very little choice in the matter. And now this woman takes a little bit different view of that, but she says, what does God is in control mean? And she uses Genesis 1:1. She says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That means He's in control, right? Because He was there from the beginning. He controlled the way the earth was made, and the universe was made, and made the firmament and divided the waters, which were under the all this stuff. Um, God gives man free will, she says, but He does have laws and commandments, and it's much easier in life if you abide by the rules and commandments. Okay, so then she moves on to Job. God told the devil that he could take all that Job had, but he could not take his life. God was in control then, and He's still in control. And then she goes on to say, I've often heard people say that God won't put no more on you than you can bear. I
Oh.
believe this to be true. I'm going like, Doctor Who? I
Yeah,
mean,
she didn't listen to our last episode.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, we need to send her a link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So is
she
God in control of all sin?
Uh,
apparently,
I feel like
see,
we need to clarify that with Job though as well, is because God didn't tell Satan, God didn't grant this special situation for
no,
for Satan to mess with Job. God was saying, I did not give Job any special protection. You have the
exactly.
power to do this to
You
anyone.
have had
Yeah.
access to him all along.
Right.
If you haven't messed with Job yet, it's on you, not me.
Yeah.
That's right.
We might want to get into the Hebrew language and some of the theological concepts behind that.
Hmm.
But basically we have this kind of a first reading. We say, "Oh yeah, God said, go get him, go
Yeah,
get Job, just don't kill him."
Yeah.
It's
they
like,
the
well,
ultimate bet. See what
that
happens.
that's God's toying around with killing Job's family over
Yeah,
a game of cards.
yeah,
Yeah.
Uh, that's just that's one thing we know is that it can't have been that way.
that's
There's
right.
no way it can't be. But she says, here's how we know that God is in control. Let's look at Job. The devil asked permission to touch Job, and the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all he has is in your power, only upon himself. Do not put forth your hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord, and God controlled him, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
no.
yeah.
It says that he's suffered many calamities, but remained committed to God. That proves that God is in control.
Now, would and I'm not asking this to really open a can of worms, but this
Do
is
it.
just my gears are turning.
Open it up.
Um, how does a Calvinist, how do they reconcile the whole God is in control thing? Because if God has elected and chosen everything and there is
Yep.
no free will,
Right.
then by that nature could they try to argue that he is in control?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that is probably, I mean, this statement fits extremely well in the Reformed tradition,
Yeah.
Hmm.
theology tradition, because it just says that nothing happens outside of God's will. God
Yeah,
is, he knows everything, he sees everything, he wills everything, and everything does God's bidding.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, so Joe was just, too bad for you. That's what God willed for you today. Sucks to be you.
Just
And
I wish I could plug in the meme that I reference so often about the Calvinists where Danny DeVito's got the 2x4 and pushing the person down. God hates some.
well,
Show
well,
Right.
this is something else we got to think about too. If God that statement, well, God is in control. Well, if that's the case, God is in control of Satan as well. And so
Should be.
here's the deal. So that's God's ultimate plan: is I'm gonna play with Satan, move him around for a few millennia, and then I'll save him from something
Yeah.
I caused.
I'm just going to mess people up for a while,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that,
few
Yeah.
thousand years.
yeah.
And then, I'll swoop in and, I mean, so then she goes on to Moses. And it says, this is a good example of God being in control and a king or Pharaoh fighting the will of God, but it's ultimately submitting. Okay. So she uses Exodus 5:1. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. What did Pharaoh say? No,
No.
No,
I'm not going to.
he
So
said,
in
"How
that
about
moment,
no?"
Yeah.
yeah, was God in control of Pharaoh at that moment? Apparently not, because he told Moses what to tell him, and Pharaoh said, no. How many plagues did it take for God to bend Pharaoh to his will?
10.
10 of them. And
But God was in control because he hardened Pharaoh's heart. Come
yes,
on, man.
yes, it was not hard before. So God intentionally hardened it
That's
Right.
right.
so that he could mess people up with frogs and locusts and blood and killing their firstborn child. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Oh,
if
come
God
on!
had
It's
not
written in
hardened,
plain English.
I know. Well, if God would have allowed Pharaoh's heart to stay soft, nobody's children would have died. But
There
God
you
Yeah.
go.
hardened Pharaoh's heart. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
Well,
everything happens for a reason.
was he in control when the angels fell from heaven and slept with them and created the Nephilim?
Um,
Absolutely.
apparently, he was. Yeah.
That's
Um,
what a lot of these things we
I know.
talk about. I feel like when you when you really start to, because again, God is in control. I've probably said that myself.
Oh, a
Like,
million times for sure.
but when you really, I feel like they're like an onion that's rotten in the core, and you like start once you unpeel the layers and you get to the center, you're like, well, this stinks. This doesn't work.
I,
And
I think
Right.
I think this is the danger we get into is when we read scripture in isolation. When we take a single narrative and say this is what it's about. Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
scripture's got to line up across the entire narrative. And like if when we expand this to all 66 books, that's not the character of God.
Well, and here's what we do sometimes, Pat, is we get this two different kinds of God things. It's
Old
like I
Testament,
don't
New
like,
Testament.
that's
Hmm.
exactly right, because we see Jesus, And Jesus doesn't embody any of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Jesus doesn't harden anybody's heart. Jesus doesn't, I mean, all the things, Jesus doesn't cut Satan loose on the world. He casts them out and he
Yeah.
binds them. So if we're going, okay, so Jesus said the kingdom of God is now here, and then God's doing all this crap over here, and he's sending evil spirits and all this stuff. It's like, which God is it?
Yeah.
It's the same God.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
And here's the funny thing is Jesus is God in human form to demonstrate for us and to show us God's true character. In the Old Testament, they were so far, far, far away from God. They didn't know anything about Jesus, anything about the Holy Spirit. They knew
Right.
about this faraway God who may or may not be equal or equivalent to the Mesopotamian gods or the Egyptian
Yeah.
gods, but and they were afraid of him, and so they just said, "Oh yeah, God must have sent that storm. God must have sent that famine." And and then we see Jesus is like, "Oh, you're a lot different." Yeah, because we had an incomplete view of God before we understood Jesus and before we experienced the Holy Spirit. Now
Yeah.
we have the fullness of God in a way that we can sort of wrap our minds around. And so
I've
when we say God is in control, was Jesus in control?
yes,
I mean,
if that's what they're gonna say. Yeah, I mean that, and that's what I feel like they almost make God of the Old Testament like a mean,
yep,
ruthless, like a
yes,
ruthless, mean God.
Well, I mean, we got to think about these statements. If that was the case, why would Jesus ask to not have to go to the cross? Let this cup pass from me.
that's what we're
Let
talking
let
about.
me not do
Yep,
this. Because Jesus is God. He could have said, "Nah, that whole crucifix thing. Nah, let's find another way."
there
Yeah,
is another way we could do this. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
And
I'm gonna take Pontius Pilate on in 101. That'll work.
I
We'll do
know.
that.
And truth of the matter is, Jesus could have defeated the powers of evil without dying,
Yeah,
but then the rest of his children would have been toast
yeah,
that's right.
because there would be no redemption for them.
Hmm.
yeah.
So here you got the cleaned up world with a bunch of rotten people on it.
That's right.
They're not redeemed. And so he had to do the whole package. I guess is what I'm saying here. So uh, once again, here's another one that proves that God is in control. Um, she talks about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, and there comes the fourth man in the fire, and he's walking around with them. So that proves that God is in control. Why did God let them be cast into the fire in the first place? I mean, I so
I get
Stop here.
couldn't
Stop it. You're being logical.
I know,
would
I know.
it be is this a scenario where we've talked about before where God intervenes at times and other times he like there's
Yeah,
no method to the madness kind of thing.
there. The, okay, here's my golden article. I love this article because the title says, "Please stop saying God is in control."
Yeah,
Okay.
And
gets right to the point. I like it.
I know. Um, and he talks about a coworker. Her teenage daughter said, "If God is in control, why did He let Dad leave us?" And the coworker said, I told her God doesn't make people do things. Everyone has free will. They get to choose what they do. But
Hmm.
that's hard for a teenager to understand. And then we get back to this question, same with all things work together for good. If God is all powerful and if God is in control, why does God allow so many bad things to happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what he does here is something that I really like. He says, I find saying God is in charge more compelling than saying God is in control. So do you want someone who is a king or a control freak?
Yeah. A
Is
king.
kind of what it comes down to,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Um, so, I mean, okay. He says if God is in control, we may have a problem. Um, he says back in the seminary days, my theologically professor likes to say, if you're going to ride the train, you have to take it to the end of the line, and that's kind of what we're getting at here, right?
Yeah.
You have to follow it all the way through. Um, when Christians say God is in control, what they usually mean is God makes things happen or stops them from happening,
Mhm.
designs, ordains, and governs, says theologian and pastor John Piper. That
Uh-oh.
means
Well,
nothing happens outside what God knows will happen and wants to happen.
that's
Okay?
what he says.
That's what he
Yeah.
says. Direct quote. Yeah.
Well,
Knows will
makes
happen
sense.
and wants to happen.
So
So,
Peter, the
yes,
the MLB is decided by God.
yeah.
Who wins and loses games?
And God's not been happy with me for a very long time, apparently.
If that's the case, God is. I must be a sinner, or at least going to hell because I've been a Titans fan for a long time. And
Yeah. No, you
Hold
have,
on. So Piper really believes
yeah,
that
yeah,
God all things. Which, I mean, Piper's a Calvinist for people that
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. That's true.
So that,
Very famous one.
but it's just that's wild to me. So I mean, he would even and I know I've heard some of the crazy things that he's justified, but like he would justify your child getting cancer. Like he'd be like, well, God
Mhm.
wanted that to
Yep.
happen.
We don't. It's the mystery of God's will. We just
Yeah,
have
yep.
to submit
mm,
to it.
man,
If you're being abused in your marriage, you need to stay there and allow God to refine you through the trouble that you're going through.
interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, I
I know.
just can't get on board with that.
Nope. I can't either. Um, of course, um, there are ways that we read scripture that would suggest that God exactly does that. It says, uh, the Lord threw the Amorites into a panic and the Israelites slaughtered great numbers of them at Gibeon. There's all sorts of that language in there. God sent Saul an evil spirit and all these kinds of things. And you can come up with all kinds of things like that. But when you hear God describe himself, even in the Old Testament, how does God describe himself? I'm a God of mercy,
Hmm.
of love, of justice. Even when he says, vengeance is mine, that sounds like a monster, but not if you're on the side that's being beat up.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Then that sounds like mercy and justice to me, you know? So, and okay, so part of this is in the ancient world, your tribal god, your personal national god, was a deity who went to war for you and controlled the outcomes. And so, if your God was not as powerful as the Amorite God, then your God would lose and you would have to worship the Amorite God. That's kind of the deal.
yeah.
And so, that's the way they viewed their God, Yahweh, most of the time. That's not the way God describes himself. Um, so, if you want to argue that God is in control, then God is good and God is evil.
Yep.
I don't see any other way around that.
I don't either. Yeah,
Because of the existence of good and evil in the world.
And apparently, it's the evil that God wills.
Hmm.
God willed that 14-minute mudslide that I watched the other day.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I
it was
I
devastating.
would I'd like to hear because I mean Piper is very knowledgeable theologically.
Oh,
I mean he's
brilliant.
yeah. So I would love to hear him justify that. Um, that's because that's crazy. I mean that's just crazy to me. That again, I can't get on board with it. Um,
I I've listened to Piper and I've listened to John MacArthur and I used to listen to R.C. Sproul quite a
yeah,
bit, another prominent Calvinist in his day, and they would talk a lot about even God's decretive will, that God decrees a bad thing to happen in a certain situation for a reason that we don't know
Hmm.
and we'll never know.
Yep.
It's horrible. It's a tragedy, and it's all within the scope of God's will.
Yep. His ways are above our ways. We don't have to understand it.
Yeah, and so then he says, if God is not in control, we have a bigger problem. If you take the train in the opposite direction, you end up with a powerless, weak God,
Hmm.
incapable of controlling events. That means that God created the world and humans took it and messed it up and destroyed it. And God just had to go, well, these kids, I just don't know what to do with them. And so, presumably God just lets free will run rampant,
Yeah.
and that's it. And so, if that's the case, then we're hopeless because God's not going to intervene anywhere. Um, so, obviously, we know that neither one of these, I mean, neither one of these extremes works, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because if God is a control freak, then he's not who he describes himself to be. And if God is a complete passive waste of time, then, uh, you know,
Why does he sometimes intervene? Yeah, I mean, why does he sometimes intervene? Why do you think that is?
um, I think there are a couple of reasons. God intervened when he saw that the intent and actions of man was only evil always,
Only
and it was
evil
so bad,
always.
yeah, that we literally were going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
God intervenes to you know to save us, and to
Hmm.
to save His creation. I also think that, and I do believe that prayer enters into this. But I believe that God prompts you to pray in certain ways, like you were describing your prayer to us last week,
Yeah.
and you felt prompted to pray that. You know,
Yeah.
there's something in your spirit. It was more than just you were concerned. There was something
Right.
in your spirit that said, "I need to pray for that." That's a small version of "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." That we, you know, and so when God it directs you to pray like that, and you pray like that, then it's an open invitation for God to intervene in the way that He wants to intervene. Um, I I believe that, and Pat and I have talked about this a lot, um, that God is mostly concerned in situations of distress about the greatest possible glory.
Hmm.
That what will what will bring the greatest glory to Him.
Yep.
Um, and so, if sometimes it's a miraculous healing, that's going to be the greatest glory is to heal that person right now. Jesus used it a million times,
Hmm.
casting out a demon, raising somebody from the dead. That's the greatest glory. But sometimes the greatest glory is to allow that person to pass
Yeah.
Yep.
or to live with a particular condition for a certain amount of time. Is that there's possibly greater glory in the family dynamics, in the witness, in the testimony, in the, you know, and these are all just very base level human. God sees so far beyond what we can see that I think that we are compelled to trust God in His desire to intervene or not intervene.
Well,
Uh,
this also comes into play with what you preached on Sunday about our identity. Is how
yes,
are we going to question God's will or control in our lives if we don't even know the identity for ourselves that God
that,
wants us to be?
that's it. That's it. Um, and the idea that we have access to power doesn't mean what some of our name it, claim it, hyper Pentecostal
Mhm.
friends have done. They said, well, you pray in this way. You kneel here, you pray, you tarry, and you speak in tongues, and
Yep.
it's going to happen because God has to. Another
Right.
way,
Yeah.
paint him into a corner. Um, I don't believe God does it. I know that He intervenes, and I know that He doesn't. He healed my wife's wrist instantly, but He did not heal my brother when he was in his
Yep.
car accident.
Yeah.
And I have to believe in those situations that I trust that God is going to get the most glory out of
Yep.
each one of those situations that He already has. So um, we see this as God in partnership with humans, in partnership with His creation, but God's in charge.
Hmm.
There's nothing too extreme that's going to happen that God is not going to get involved with. And so we see this in Jesus. He talks about this here. He says, Jesus shows us how God works in the world through humans. In Jesus, we see a God who's not afraid to get his hands dirty and go through messy life with humans. For early Christians, Jesus was a new way of thinking about and interacting with God. Through Jesus, God is not a dictator or a puppeteer or a control freak. God is a servant king working alongside humanity in the
Yep.
struggle to make all things new.
Yep.
I heard this great thing. Oh man, it blew my mind. I was listening to this, watching a video or something, and the guy said, we pray all the time to be in the presence of God. We want to be in the constant presence of God. And he said, uh, every time there's a
Mm.
visitation from God or an angel, one of his representatives in the Bible, it scares the pee out of them
Yeah.
and it commands them to do something that might get them killed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yep.
And it always has to tell him, yeah, don't be afraid. Yeah, do not be afraid.
Right. But then it gives them a commandment that is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You know,
and my boy Ezekiel would say, "Well, how long? How
I
long, oh
know,
Lord?"
I know.
Yeah.
And Mary's going, let me think about that for a minute. Uh,
Yeah.
she pondered it in her heart, and it's like, why would we want to pray for that every day? To
Yeah.
be shocked and terrified out of our wits and ask to do something that might get us killed. And then he said, God has the grace to just let us live our lives.
Mhm.
The presence of God is all consuming and it is always convicting and it's always, I mean, you know where you stand in life if you're in the presence of God. How would you like that following you around 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
mean,
know,
it would be like, God is watching. Yeah, I know he's right here. It's like it's not that God isn't everywhere or he's not watching or that he doesn't care. But if we felt the abiding presence of God
Yeah.
24 hours a day, it would crush us.
Yeah.
And
oh gosh, yeah.
and God's it's like you have the freedom to go outside and you have the freedom to uh, glorify God for the sunrise or to say a few cuss words because you got stung by that darn wasp.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
God's not going to. It's not. Oh, that's God's will that wasp stung me.
Yeah.
God's not feeling good today. No, He gives us a wide berth.
Yeah.
And we can go out and do the things we want to do. We can hang out with the people we want to hang out with. God's not going. And I think this is a lot of what He's getting at here. A servant king.
That's
So
something that
go ahead.
that's something that makes me question though too. So if by that rationale is any time that we mess up in our walk and we backslide or we just just drop the ball really bad, God's in control of that. He did that too.
No, but He is in charge.
Yeah.
He's going to let you know how He feels about it.
Yeah.
Y'all, I know y'all are familiar with the Babylon Bee.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for those that aren't, it's a Christian like parody
Satire.
site, and
Yeah.
it is the best.
It's
Uh,
pretty funny.
you were talking, and now and we kind of passed it, but I just got to share this. This one tripped me out. It's I'm gonna hold it up. I don't know if anybody can read it. It might be backwards in there. It shows a drawing of Mary and Joseph, and it says, "You're gonna be a perpetual what?" Joseph asks Mary on wedding night. That's
That's pretty good.
that is it. Like when you were talking about like Mary is like, let me think about this. Yeah, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what about Joseph? He's like, hey, let me
Uh-huh.
think about this.
Yeah. Right. But no, here's the deal. God, the angel of the Lord showed up to him in a
Mhm.
dream
Yeah,
and told him to do something that he really didn't want to do.
yeah, yeah.
I don't want that every day.
I think people overlook the fact, he was going to divorce her.
Yeah.
He was in the process.
That's
Yeah.
a very I feel like that's a very overlooked
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that he was gonna do it like what wasn't he gonna do it like in the night so that it wasn't like a
He was
disgrace
going
to her?
to he's going to put her away quietly.
Yeah,
And so there was three ways that you could break a betrothal. You could drag her out into the square, make an example of her, and have her stoned to death.
yeah,
And a lot of people did. Or you could do this openly in a court setting or in a formal legal elders of the town kind of setting, make the accusation. She would go away shunned and in shame, and you would keep your honor and your dignity knowing that you did, and everybody in town would know that you didn't do anything wrong, that
yeah,
she went out and hung out with some Roman soldier somewhere. This is what happens.
yeah,
Or if you cared about the person and her family, then you could do it quietly. They would get together at night. They would sign all the legal documents. There had to be, a little legal team there. And then you just wouldn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody go their way. Mary probably would be hidden for a while, and then there would just be a baby.
yeah.
and everybody would respect everybody's space and wink wink, nod nod, we know what happened to her, but we're not going to talk about it, and he'd be off the hook. He could choose somebody else, and that's what he was in the process of doing
Gotcha.
at the time when the angel showed up to him in a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
that
you
was
go.
crazy.
God is in control.
He tells this story about his freshman history class in high school. He says the class was loud and rowdy, but when the teacher, Mr. Woody, how about that, walked in the door and stood in front of the class, everyone went silent. Every time we started to get loud again while Mr. Woody was teaching, all he had to do was look at us or raise his hand. We would quiet down because we knew that he meant business. He was not in control of the class, but he was in charge of the
Mm.
class. He was
Yeah.
responsible for our growth and our learning, and we knew from experience that his threats were not hot air. And it made him the most popular teacher at their school. How
Yeah.
about that?
That's a good way of looking at it.
I I think it was right. Being in charge makes God much more powerful than if we were in control. Um, I don't know if you know Tony Campolo. He was pretty famous back in the day. He kind of went off the rails a little bit too, but he said, I am not questioning the extent of God's power. I believe that God has chosen not to be in control of everything going on in this world. In Christ, we find a God who deliberately gave up power to control everything in order to save the world through sacrificial love. What do you
Yep.
think about that statement?
Yep. I agree with that.
If all his disciples were always asking him, when are you going to take control?
Yep.
Instead, he
And
goes to sleep on the boat.
that's exactly right. I know. Um, Greg Boyd is a free will writer. He's a good guy. He wrote a book called "Is God to Blame?" And here's this is what we were just talking about a minute ago about God's intervention.
Hmm.
Hmm.
He says God interacts with the world according to rules only God understands.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are
That's
rules.
that's where the mystery, again, this is a common theme with all of these phrases, is it's trying to unravel the mystery that is God and the
Yep.
mystery of why he does what he
Yep.
does and doesn't do what we want him to do.
Uh huh.
And that's what it is. It's we can't our human brains struggle with the mystery.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
always want that mystery solved, and I think that's our problem in this case.
Well,
And
that's why
here,
we call him the Lord too, as
that's right.
you know, because the Lord means He's in charge. But
Yeah.
Jesus always associates this with being a shepherd, and all of His characteristics of being a shepherd are not about having total control. If you think about it, it's always about rescue and care, is what it's about.
Yeah.
And it's about following.
Yep.
Here's the thing: is if we have this distant view of God, or if we just automatically assign everything to God's will, what that does is to our relationship with Him is we admire Him, we might even exalt Him or praise Him, we are in awe of Him, but doesn't compel us to follow Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't. We don't imagine that God is somebody who gets down with us and gets his hands dirty.
Yep.
He's up there somewhere, pushing all the buttons and doing all the stuff. Listen to this statement. This will kind of blow your mind a little bit. Um, this other writer, Olson, says God choosing to limit himself for the sake of human free will is the way to avoid being a heretic by denying God knows the future.
Mm,
God knows the future, chooses to limit himself so that we can still have free will.
I like
That's what
that.
we're doing.
I like it because it's what we talked about when we did our free will episode and
Yes.
kind of went into that. It's, in my opinion, for it to be true love and actual love, I feel like you have to have the choice to choose otherwise.
Sure.
I don't see any other way around that.
Yeah, if you're controlled to do that, then is it true love? I
It
don't think
can't
so.
I don't think, God prefers, God demands that people love him by choice, which
Yep.
means they
Yep.
can also choose not to love him.
That's right.
I don't, I don't see any other way for that to work. Here's the beautiful illustration, though, and then I'm going to get to a couple of my thoughts from this awesome sermon that I wrote one time. Um, Okay, so he says people have always used light as a metaphor for God. This is brilliant. He says, funny thing about light, though, I am no physicist, but as I understand it, everything in the known universe is either made of waves or particles,
Mm.
but not light. Light is both a wave and a particle. It shouldn't be possible, but light is two different substances. Do you see where I'm going with this? God is light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He describes himself as light. Jesus said, I am the light
Yeah.
of the world.
That's
Um,
good.
yes. And so I want to drop this in here. I'm not going to, well, I actually do have time to kind of walk through this story. It's an amazing story. Um,
Well, let's
in
hear it.
Okay, I'll give it to you. In 1921, a missionary couple named David and Svea Flood went from with their 2-year-old son from Sweden to the heart of Africa. They were missionaries. Okay, they met up with another Scandinavian couple, the Ericsons, and they were in the central mission station. They felt led by the Lord to go out to this remote village in the Congo. The chief was not happy with them there, wouldn't even let him come into their town because they were going to make the local gods mad. And so they went a half a mile away from the town, built their own huts, prayed, spiritual breakthrough, no spiritual breakthrough. The only contact with the villagers was a young boy who was allowed to sell them chickens and eggs twice a week. The wife, Svea, she's a tiny woman, 4 feet 8 inches tall. She decided that if this boy was the only African they could reach for Christ, then she would consider that a victory. So, struck up a friendship, and no movement, and malaria came through the whole community, and it struck one member of their little group after another. And the Ericksons decided they were out. They went back to the central mission station, and at that moment, Svea found herself pregnant. And so, when the time came for her to give birth, the village chief softened enough to allow a midwife to come and help her. And so a little girl was born. They named her Ina. The delivery was difficult. Svea was weak from malaria, and she only lasted 17 days.
I remember this.
Yeah, you probably do remember this because it's an awesome story.
It is.
Um, so David snapped. He buried his wife, went to the central mission station, gave his new daughter to the Ericsons, and said, I'm going back to Sweden. I've lost my wife. Can't take care of this baby. God has ruined my life. And 8 months later, both of the Ericsons were stricken with an illness and died within days of each other. Okay. So that's kind of the first part of the story. So we have to ask ourselves, was God in control?
Hmm.
Uh,
If he
He
was,
gave,
it don't sound very good.
well, he gave everyone malaria because he knew they were going to walk away.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the things that people outside the faith say, look, if God is all powerful, why didn't he stop that?
Yep.
And if he is not if he's all loving, if he's loving and he's not powerful, then that's what we get. He loves you, but he's not powerful enough to do anything about it.
Right.
If he's powerful, he must not be loving because it means he's powerful enough to do it. And he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
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 That's the big
Yeah.
criticism. Okay, so in this message, I worked my way through all God causes all things to work together for good and all that kind of thing. Okay, so here's where I kind of get to the middle points. Is God really in control? Uh, and I say no. Uh, God is not a control freak. He's a ruler, not a dictator.
Yeah.
But here's a point that I make that I had pondered for quite some time, because God sets up systems, right? God
Hmm.
sets up weather systems. He sets the motion of orbits of the planets and the movement of the stars, the expansion of the universe. But God isn't. God isn't there. Like I'm going to move the universe 1 inch today.
Right.
Like, he puts the whole system in place and lets it go.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And when in the very beginning, all worked extremely perfectly. Okay, but then what happens? Sin enters into the world. Sin is chaos. Sin is
Yep.
disorder. Sin is destructive. And so now you have you have the systems that are going out of whack, out of kilter. The sin is messing it up. And so God, this is why we say, well, God, why did you send that earthquake? And God's like, dude, you know, there were no earthquakes when I first made it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so earthquakes are going to happen. Now, there are some ways that God intervenes, and this person gets prompted to get up in the middle of the night and run away, and he's saved from the earthquake. Those are ways that God intervenes, but God, by and large, does not hold back the tsunami.
Hmm.
He obviously doesn't stop the wildfires. He puts the systems in place and he lets them roll. And
Yeah.
then, we either through technology learn how to deal with them, or sometimes we just get caught in the same thing with disease. God didn't make the disease. It's like, dude, there were no diseases when I made this thing. Uh, there are now, you
Yeah.
know?
You live in a fallen world.
Yes. And sometimes the fallen world is going to affect you.
On
Hmm.
the like the tsunami or the hurricane thing, and I say this, well, we talked about it, and I've seen this on Instagram here not that long ago. There was the church that
Yeah.
the hurricane or something decimated the
Yeah.
town, and there's this perfect church
Church is
left
still standing.
standing. And in the comments, that's what people were
Yep.
saying, because again, this is social media. And they were like, "Oh, how nice! God saw fit to destroy everybody's homes and kill people, but He
Except
protected
his
His
own.
church."
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so, what would you is that? Would you look at that and say, "All right, did, did God protect His church, or is it just total happenstance that the church is still standing?" What would you say to that?
I, you, that's a difficult one because we'd have to know God's mind in that whole situation.
Yeah,
More than likely, like in a lot of, especially if it was an old timey town, the church was the best built building in town.
yeah,
They just put all their effort into it. And so, it just happens to be the one that withstands that stuff
yeah,
And
sometimes.
and I would say we have to reverse that line of thinking too, because if God destroyed all the houses around the church, maybe God didn't want anyone to go to that said church because He just made everyone have to move
Just
away.
eliminate the
Well,
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I'm almost thinking on the other spectrum, I'm like, maybe the people that survived in the town, their one semblance of hope is that standing church.
Yeah.
So they go to
Completely.
church
You
and
could
they're,
read into it anything you want, and even more than one of those could be true.
yeah,
Yeah.
And we, because of the way God weaves everything together for good, that God is going to be working in that community and will bring something good to
Hmm.
those who love Him and are called according to His purpose because they're in the kingdom. We talked last week about dual citizenship.
Yeah.
You know, that part of us lives here and part of us lives there, so we have access. And that's what He's talking about when He says, "To those who love Him, are called according to His purpose." To those who have that line to the heavens, that every kind of spiritual blessing belongs to them
yeah,
already. People who don't belong to the kingdom cannot claim that, and so just random things happen, and there is no point. There is no God working it together for good. It just happens. Sucks to be you,
yeah.
That's
you know. And when God closes that jail door, He doesn't necessarily open another jail door.
You
You
find
know
a
what I'm
spoon that you can
saying?
then dig the wall out,
That's
Shawshank
it.
Redemption
yeah,
style.
yeah, that's the window.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, yeah, yeah, he opens the window. He opens an air duct,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the interesting thing about the passage in Romans, about God works, God causes all things to work together good, is that verse 31 in the last verse in that little paragraph says, "If God is for us, who can be against us?"
Yeah,
And, in some ways we think, oh, well, I'm going to win every battle. And, it's like, God's for us. Nobody's going to beat us. But honestly, it says if God is for us, he's relating that back to God working all things together for good. It
Hmm.
means that the worst thing that can happen to you and the spirit world thinks that it has crushed you to death, but yet there's going to be some hope spring up, and there's going to be some good things happen, and you'll still grieve the loss. It's a horrible tragedy that you went through,
Yeah.
but you will praise God for the good that miraculously came out of a
Yeah.
terrible situation. Um, so let me tell you the last part of the story then. Okay, so the baby, after the Ericksons died, she was turned over some American missionaries who changed her name to Aggie because they could say it better. And they took her back to America. She went to North Central Bible College in Minneapolis. She met and married a young man. Years passed. Dewey Hurst was his name. Um, the Hursts were in ministry and they enjoyed a fruitful ministry. So one time, her husband became president of a Christian college in Seattle. And one day, a religious magazine from Sweden appeared in her mailbox. She had no idea who sent it. She couldn't read the words. But all of a sudden, as she turned the pages, a photo stopped her cold. Because there, in a primitive setting, was a grave with a white cross, and on the cross were the words Svea Flood. So she went to a fellow faculty member, and he could speak the language, and he translated it. And so he summarized the story. It was about missionaries who'd come to this region of the Congo. They talked about the birth of a white baby, the death of the young mother. All this was on the cross. Okay, the one little African boy had been led to Christ, and how after the whites had all left, the boy had grown up and finally persuaded the chief to let him build a school. And then gradually he won all his students to Christ. They led their parents to Christ. Even the chief was now a Christian. And now there were 600 Christian believers in that one village alone.
Man,
What
yeah.
do you think about that? Okay. So was God in control of that? Well, no, he was in charge of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one more part. Because the college gifted them a vacation to Sweden. She wanted to go find her father. She found her father. He had remarried, had four more children, um, wrecked his life with alcohol, suffered a stroke, and he made one rule in his family: never mention the name of God because God took everything from me. And so she went and met her half brothers and half sisters, and they said, "You don't want to go see Dad because he's very ill and he's very bitter." She went anyway. She went into his little apartment, liquor bottles, stench, and filth everywhere. He's 73 years old. He's lying in this trashed out bed, and she says, "Papa." And he turns toward her and begins to weep. And he says, "Ina, I never meant to give you away." And she says, "It's all right because God took care of me." And he says, "God forgot all of us. My life turned out this way because of him." And then she says, "Papa, I have a story to tell you. You didn't go to Africa in vain. Mama didn't die in vain. The little boy you won to the Lord grew up to win that whole village to Jesus. The one seed you planted just kept growing and growing. There are 600 African people serving the Lord today because you were faithful to the call of God in your life." He says, "Papa, Jesus loves you. He's never hated you." And it was in that moment that he just sort of started to break. And by the end of the afternoon, he'd come back to Christ. And a few years later, they were in London, and the leader of the National Church of Zaire, representing some 110,000 baptized believer, spoke at this conference thing. And Aggie ran up to him and said, "Have you ever heard of David and Svea Flood?" And he said, "Yes, I was the boy who brought chickens and eggs for all those months."
Gives me chills.
Yeah.
You just can't, I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, and he quotes the scriptures to him. He says, "Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy," and all these different kinds of things. It's just, I guess the whole point is, um, we sometimes think too little of God and sometimes think too much of the way that God relates to us.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think about this whole idea of that God being in control, Logan?
Man, until I had broke it down, I would have probably said, yeah, he's in control. Because again, I know I've said that to people before. I jokingly said the Jesus take the wheel thing at the beginning, but I think
Yeah,
that's the mindset that a
yeah,
lot of us
exactly.
have. It's like, man, Jesus take the wheel, man, and he's got it. So that's kind of how I feel. But again, now that we peel the layers back,
Hmm.
it's you learn where it limits God in a lot of factors, and then it makes him responsible for
Yeah,
evil and makes him responsible for things that is just the complete opposite of who he is.
Right.
I agree. Somebody told me one time, I said, if you don't believe that God is sovereign and in control and that nothing happens outside of his will, then you believe in a small God. And I said, no, honestly, I think that um, the controlling God is a very small God
Hmm.
because if the goal is to bring 110,000 Congolese people to Christ, was the only way he could do that by giving somebody malaria and killing
Right.
his wife? That's
No,
the
yeah,
only way that God could have
Yeah.
done that. And so he had to do it that way. It was in his will because it's the only way that God could possibly get that done. There are millions of ways that God could bring those people to Christ. He took a young couple's passion. They wanted to go anyway. They wanted to serve God. Certain things happened to him along the way. God chose not to intervene in this situation because there was going to be glory coming out of this thing somewhere. Didn't intervene in the Erickson's life because there was going to be some glory come out of this whole thing. But then, in a miraculous set of circumstances, God did engineer and orchestrate a way for Sophia to get back to her dad, for her
Yeah.
dad to get, and the boy to get back to there, and all that amazing stuff. And the magnitude of that glory is so much bigger than if he had just healed via flood in the first place and they could have gone back home.
And the difference in that is too is this way God let people choose him.
And he let them participate to the
Yep.
fullest extent.
Yep.
But I will say this, and we'll wrap it up with this. I also came up with this phrase because I like doing that, and I think this is pretty good. Because I asked myself the question, well, is it terrible? I mean, like, do I have to cringe when somebody says God is in control? And no, I don't. I mean, i- there is one way that God is absolutely in control. God is in control of everything that we give him control over.
Ooh, that's good.
yeah.
God doesn't take control from us. He
Hmm.
doesn't exercise control over us. But when we give him control, Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, and it comes back to that old saying, like God, Jesus is Savior of all, but how many times do we let Him be Lord?
Exactly. And when we give God control, he still lets us participate. But
Hmm.
but God does amazing things when we surrender to him, when
Yeah,
we really submit to him. And we're willing to do the crazy things that might get us killed that God comes in the night and asks us to do. Um,
So
that
would you say, because through the orchestration, like I said, of things kind of happening, in a way, would God have been kind of opening those doors
I
for
say
that to
he
happen?
would. Yes, he did. So
and if He would have closed them, she never would have got back to her father in Sweden.
so you could say, oh well, God closed that door, but he opened another one. See, it all works. Um, yes and no. I mean, I would say that God's tendency, in his nature and his love for us, he doesn't want to leave us without hope, and he doesn't want to leave us without jobs and without
Yeah,
opportunities and all these other things. So yeah, if a relationship fails, more than likely God's going to lead you into another one.
yeah.
Yeah,
But to paint God into a corner like that, and then say, well, God is in control, so I don't have to be. If this one failed, it must have been God's will. It's the whole thing we've been talking about the last couple of weeks.
and
Yeah.
and see, I would even say that's a bigger danger is by us saying God is in control. Therefore, I don't have to be responsible for
Yep.
anything. I
Yeah.
don't
I'm
have
a,
to try. I don't have
yeah,
to do anything. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Because and it relates to everything happens for a reason and all this sort of stuff. This is God is in control is like the big daddy of that
yeah,
whole line of theological thinking.
Yeah.
yeah.
And we just sort of toss it around like, well, and it makes us throw up our hands and go, well, nothing I can do about it, we got, I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of my deal. So there you go. We only got through two today, but they were good ones.
They were. Those were
They
very
were.
good.
They were really good.
Yep. And the guy who vaporized will be missed. All right,
I
tell them what to do,
almost
love.
got that one. I
I,
almost got that one.
I
Tell them
forgot
what
to
to
do
do.
this last time. Before we go, I
Okay.
want to thank our sponsors of Peter, Logan, and Pat.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right. Yes, pat
We
ourselves on the back
are
here.
our
Yeah.
own sponsors. Yes, I like to sponsor myself.
Guys, y'all know what to do before we log off of here. Y'all need to leave us a rating and a review, comment
Yep,
below. Hey, and share it on Facebook. If you see the post, because Peter also puts this out on Facebook,
I do.
on our Holly Grove page on there, share it, and tell your friends. You know, I read a book one time, or just here recently, and it was on. I'm kind of a film nerd, and it was talking about even back in the day, Sidney Lumet. Have y'all heard of him?
Yeah.
All right, so it's his book. I can't remember the name of it, but it's on filmmaking. And he talked about one of the best signs of whether or not a movie would be successful in theaters was they would have a test screening, and at the test screening they'd ask them questions at the end. And the questionnaire, one of them said, "Would you tell a friend about this movie?" And he said, dependent on how strong of a response they got to that question, was generally how successful the movie would be. And so, obviously, the more likely somebody was to recommend it, the better it would do. Same with the podcast, because he said, dude, that's the Hollywood machine.
It is.
They got all this money, yet still the best thing that they can have is somebody to tell somebody about it. So that would definitely help our podcast. If it helps freaking Hollywood, surely it'll help our podcast. So tell somebody about the show, share it, and I mean, just keep the train rolling is what we're gonna do.
What's good for Hollywood is good for Holly Grove.
There you go, man. There's
5th Peter 6:22.
Yeah,
yes. All right,
definitely.
guys. We will catch you next week.
Appreciate you. Absolutely.